This video is going to be my first preview for the Ravens-Jaguars matchup in Week 15 in Jacksonville. Sunday night football game between two teams that are looking to hold on to the top seed in the AFC. In the case of the Baltimore Ravens, are secure one or two home games. In the case of the Jags, in the first two rounds of what looks to be just a gauntlet through the AFC playoffs to try to get into the Super Bowl. This preview is going to be somewhat abbreviated or incomplete. Part one, I guess you can think, because I'm going to separate this into concepts or plays among at least two previews over the next 2 or 3 days. As such, I won't be doing a surface level glance at all three phases of the game. I'll be primarily focusing on the Ravens defense against the Jags offense in the first two previews. Consider this part one. So what I'll do here for this video this morning is focus on one formation by the Jags offense, one play concept that Doug Peterson and the offensive staff seem to enjoy utilizing in a certain area of the field and on a certain down, and that Trevor Lawrence is very comfortable with. But they run three different versions of it. And then one player for the Jags offense who's had a big impact in the last couple of weeks. So in this video, one formation, one play concept, and one player for the Jags. And a little bit of a commentary on one thing the Ravens are struggling with as well. Future previews for this game will be out Saturday morning, hopefully. And I will reference last year's game in Jacksonville, the 28-27 win for the Jags. Trevor Lawrence just lit up the Ravens secondary. Threw for 320-plus yards, 29 of 36 passing, something like 78%, 77%. Just in control, especially late in the fourth quarter. In the fourth quarter, the Jags went touchdown, field goal, touchdown on their final three drives. They got a 2-point conversion in there on their third touchdown. The field goal was a short field after, I believe, Gus Edwards fumbled. But nonetheless, the Ravens were not able to stop them at all in the fourth quarter. Lawrence was really under control, really poised, I thought. Look, Doug Peterson has a ton of experience calling plays and has pretty much seen it all in terms of what defenses will try to do against whatever formations and personnel group he uses. Trevor Lawrence got a lot of weapons, even though Christian Kirk's been out for a couple weeks. Jags have thrown for 3,300 passing yards this year, so the threat of a repeat performance from their standpoint is there. But we do know the Ravens' defense is far better than 2022 in all metrics and all ways to look at it. Become even more dangerous at getting to the quarterback. That's one thing that kind of throws a wrench in trying to predict this game. The Jags have given up 33 sacks this year, which is somewhat of a misleading number from this standpoint. The Ravens have given up 31 sacks, but those two additional sacks by the Jags have come on 80 more pass attempts. Additionally, Lamar Jackson is extremely mobile and athletic and able to escape pressure. Trevor Lawrence is an underrated athlete, for real, but he's not the caliber of dual-threat quarterback that Lamar Jackson has been in the NFL and even in college. It's just a different level of athleticism. We'll get the film started here. We're going to talk about one formation the Jaguars use in a manner that's somewhat similar to the rest of the league, but it's a very dangerous formation. I'm going to call it trips closed, because Doug Peterson and the offensive staff there, they attack both sides of the formation, the strong or the weak side, the field side or the boundary. It's a balanced formation from that standpoint. Additionally, it's a balanced formation from a run-pass ratio. So let's get the film started here. This first one is trips closed A against the Bengals, Week 13. It's a first and goal, first possession. It's a game where Trevor Lawrence got hurt, and the Jags defense gave up 490 yards of offense, including 335 passing yards to Jake Browning. Ended up losing at home 34-31. Trips closed A. What does that mean? If you're a Ravens fan, you've been watching my content long enough, you already know. But trips, if you're a Jags fan and you're watching this long, first of all, thank you, and feel free to let me know in the comment section what you think of my breakdown. So the trip side is to the downside, the bottom side of the screen, three receivers here. Closed is the tight end in a traditional three-point stance, and then A is running back, tight end, same side. If the running back's feet was over here, opposite the tight end, so all the 10 other players for the Jags were the same, we would call this trips closed B. So it's speed option to the field, to the quarterback's right. It makes sense. You're not an option team in Jacksonville, but when you do run the option, your quarterback's right-handed, you're going to run. There's probably not even a left-handed pitch on Peterson's play sheet, or most offensive coordinators' play sheets, to be honest with you. But the scheme of it, the design, the implementation, Ingram, the tight end, who's a superstar player, if you ask me, goes to get the corner, and Lawrence is going to see the D-end, in this case it's Sam Hubbard, step down with his key, meaning the tackle, his visual key. He's going to step down with the offensive tackle. And as soon as Lawrence sees that, he instantly flips the ball or pitches it slightly off the wrong foot. But, hey, you got to get it out there quick. The moment you see the DN hedge down inside and Travis Etienne, who's incredibly fast, bursts in for, a relatively easy 4-yard touchdown run. Why do you run this play? Well, you keep the defense honest. You want to keep the corner and inside linebacker along with a safety to the backside. You want to force them to defend the 3 players that are over here: quarterback, halfback, or tailback, and tight end. So on the speed option, theoretically, the tight end could release out into a route, and the running back could as well. The speed option adds a third player over there, the quarterback. Lawrence is far more athletic than he's known for, if you ask me. It's a tough concept to defend over to the boundary. What some teams do is they'll leave the corner backside, maybe put his feet right here by himself, kick this other DB over to the trip side, and then it kind of opens up speed option even more. So this is a play, if you ask me, that used to keep defenses honest to the boundary, away from the trip side, with a talented athlete like Evan Ingram there as a receiver who's got 84 catches this year. All right, against the Browns, Week 14, same formation after the motion, that is, but it's 12 personnel here. So you have 2 tight ends on the field. But look, Evan Ingram is the stand-up tight end over here. He's a hybrid for real. I mean, he's so talented as a receiving threat. Really reminds me of Mark Andrews in that he is a tight end and he can line up with his hand in the ground, a 3-point stance like you saw in the previous play, and go block. But he can go play in a stand-up position and be extremely effective as a, quote, slot receiver or even an X receiver to the backside. So same formation. Ball is on the hash. It's to their left, so wouldn't anticipate, speed option to this side where a right-handed quarterback who doesn't practice pitching with his left hand that often is going to have to pitch the ball. Of course, NFL quarterbacks are incredible athletes, so they don't need as much practice as high school players or youth players like I have experience with. But in general, a right-handed quarterback is not going to be as efficient pitching the ball to the left. So what play do you have here? It's a relatively safe play, if you ask me. The boundary side safety kicks down pre-snap, and he actually motions or says something to JOK. Talking about these 2 guys here. Basically tells JOK kind of kick over here to the trip side once Ingram motions over. You can see them communicate, pushes him over. So you've got this real clear alignment of the 2 inside linebackers, both of them on the trip side, and the safety back here to the backside. Keeping that two DBs to the backside is what I talked about because of keeping them honest, the previous play that I showed you from Week 13. This formation, if you ask me, seems like one that Lawrence can use to audible out of depending on the look that the defense gives pre-snap, because it has such distinct threats to the field side where the trips are. And you got Zay Jones, Ridley, and when he's not hurt, Christian Kirk. But Parker Washington is a guy I'll include in this video because I really liked him coming out of the NFL draft, number 1. Number 2, the last 2 weeks he's got 8 catches, 2 touchdowns, also has 2 fumbles. But I feel like this is a formation that makes it simple for the quarterback to audible out of. Probably 6 plays is my guess in this formation. I'm not going to show you all 6 of them. I'm only going to show you 4. Comes down here to Ingram real quick underneath. Walker, the other inside linebacker, has got kind of a deep drop here, and JOK doesn't push over there as far as maybe the safety wanted him to. Quick completion for 9 yards. Now, talking about the audible, that's exactly what happens here. Ingram is going to motion twice and end up with trips to the field in the exact same formation that we started this breakdown with. Trips, closed A. Trips to the right. It's 12 personnel again, so you got 3 receivers, one of which is a tight end. Second tight end up here. I think that's his helmet right there. And then the running back to the side of the tight end. So trips closed A, same as the first play. You can see Lawrence step up and communicate. Ingram echoes the call, and it's a bubble screen. So perfect example, if you ask me, of what kind of alignment-wise makes it simple, quick, and easy to audible out of this formation. There is a hold down here on Calvin Ridley right here. It's a gain of 14 yards for Ingram, but the hold gets called, so it ruins the play from a Jaguars perspective. My point is the formation is 3-by-1 with a 3 to the field, clearly. But in some ways, we used to consider it a 3-by-2 because this back could threaten so quickly to the flats on a wheel or even a little zig route back over the middle, maybe against an inside linebacker. We thought that it was a difficult thing to classify as a 3-by-1. We considered it a 3-by-2, and we treated it as such until teams started to run the ball at a trips closed A, other than zone read option to the tight end side. This is going to be a big matchup up there to the boundary. Patrick Queen is a really talented, quick, and smart inside linebacker for the Ravens who plays to the boundary. Especially out of this formation, it's going to be imperative for the Jags to get rid of the ball quickly. Ingram, smooth, really talented, great hands, underrated tight end. I think he's got 20 catches in the last 2 weeks against the Bengals and the Browns, and now 84 catches for the season. Last play for trips closed, this is going to be under center. So there's a couple other plays that I didn't show, to be honest with you, but I wanted to just illustrate under center. So no A or B designation with the back to the tight end side or away because he's on the midline, meaning the ball is on the left hash. That's the midline. The quarterback, center, and running back are all on the midline. I was incapable of drawing a straight line there, but hopefully you get the idea. Now, outside zone to the tight end side. I'm using this as kind of a jump-off point. The Jags' rushing stats do not look great recently. They've only exceeded 100 yards once in their last 5 games. Of course, they have played the 49ers and the Browns in that stretch, and I think the Bengals are still an underrated defense, even though it looks like they're not as classy and balanced and versatile as last year. Prior to that stretch, though, where the Jags had rushed for 100 yards only once in 5 games, they had exceeded 100 rushing yards 6 of their first 8 games as they started the year 6-2. Now, combined with the Ravens' struggles against 11 personnel run game, if you don't know, the Ravens had a lot of difficulty last week stopping or even slowing down the Rams' 11 personnel run game, particularly on the first drive. Game ended up being a 37-31 win for the Ravens. But this element, if you ask me, the run game out of 11 personnel or even 12 personnel, like you saw in the previous 2 previous plays to this one, because this is 11. I think it's important. Maybe it might be one of those things where Doug Peterson has looked at the film of the Ravens defense and decided, okay, we've got to be a little bit more focused on the run game at times this week because this is the soft spot in this defense. I like to use the phrase relative weakness, meaning perhaps it's not something the Ravens are terrible at or not very good. It's just relative to their other things, their coverage schemes, their pass rush, their versatility of pass rush. Relative to those other elements of the defense, it's a relative weakness. Hopefully I said that in a way that makes sense. Let's do it this way. Can the Jags offense afford to be one-dimensional with how effective and how overwhelming Mike Macdonald's pass rush and coverage schemes can be at times? Can the Ravens make them be one-dimensional? To me, that's one of the first things I'll be wondering about during the game. Are the Jags going to try to let play calls flow organically throughout the game? Or do they come in with the intention to get after the Ravens in the run game, recognizing the fact that that's been a weakness of the Ravens defense for a lot of 2023? All right, so now let's move on to a concept. So a play concept that Doug Peterson and the offensive staff deploy, oftentimes in the same area of the field. And in a situation that I'll compare to how other teams in the NFL utilize it, it's very similar. Mesh. Jags run a lot of mesh, at least in the film that I have. This is 6th possession against the Browns last week on the road. It's a 3rd and 2. It's a more typical version of mesh or more commonly used, I think is what I should say. It's a brilliant throw by Lawrence. Mesh, if you're unsure, is normally going to have a running back release on a wheel. Sometimes that route is taken more towards the sideline. Someone from one side running an underneath drag, someone from the opposite side in a compressed formation running an underneath drag, and one of the remaining receivers, usually the guy from the running back side, is either running a sit or he's just running a clear out, try to absolutely clear out this space in this area here for the running back or one of the drags to run onto. It's an amazing throw by Lawrence, if you ask me. The running back release is a little slow, and that's not something that I see with Jacksonville's team at all in the last 2 years, meaning people taking plays off. To me, it must look like he knows he's not getting the football. In any case, Lawrence does check over here. He's checking the corner first to see is the corner going to take this, or can I just throw it now? So he's at least honoring the running back's route, he being Lawrence. Then he works left to right in his reads and finds Zay Jones. Here's your two drags underneath in mesh. I think it's Parker Washington, and the tight end, I think Farrell. And then an amazing throw, if you ask me. I don't think Parker Washington really got across here really super quick either, to be honest with you. I didn't think his route was getting to the other side quick enough. So, look, it's possible that in the huddle, Lawrence knew where he was going with the football, and other guys did too. But, look, man, this is a great throw. Great catch by Zay Jones over the middle. I think Zay Jones only has like 23 catches this year because he's only played in 7 games. Now, last week against the Browns, he did get 14 targets. Browns play a lot of man-free. The Ravens tend to mix it up a little more than the Browns coverage-wise. I will, if you're a Jags fan or maybe a Ravens fan who missed it, I did do a long film study about the Ravens coverage, actually 2 of them, one before Thanksgiving and one immediately thereafter. So if you want to know more about the variety of coverages the Ravens play, and maybe like when and where they do so, check out this video that I'll try to link up here, how Mike Macdonald uses similar platforms or same defenses that look the same, alignments that look the same, to try to disguise blitzes and coverages. Same thing everybody does, but it seems like this year Macdonald and his defense has done a great job of forcing quarterbacks to hold on to the ball a little longer and allowing the pass rush to get there. I feel like this is a huge matchup between two forces that are diametrically opposed to each other. The Ravens are number 1 in the league in sacks, and I don't want to say confusing, but slowing down the processing of quarterbacks. And Lawrence, I feel like, is a guy, at least from the film I've seen this year and last year, gets rid of the ball quick. So that could be a catch-22 in and of itself, but it's a big matchup between two sides who do things in a similar fashion. I mean, the quarterback, or do things to outwit one another. The quarterback, Lawrence, gets rid of the ball quickly, makes really good decisions. The Ravens are able to confuse quarterbacks. Now, we'll get back to the Jags in a moment just to show you the standard iterations of mesh. All of these examples from other teams are going to be on third down. I'm not saying that teams only run it on third down, but there's a lot of teams that do. You have a clear out route by Marquise Brown, running back who's wide open out in the flats. Your 2 underneath drags is right here, and then the sit route in the middle of the field. Classic mesh, if you ask me. People got different names for the variations of them. This one obviously unsuccessful. Josh Dobbs with the Cardinals before he got traded. Ravens run mesh as well. You're going to get a touchdown to Mark Andrews. I think this is the Ravens' 4th touchdown in their Week 4 win at the Browns. The release by Gus is also slow. Similar somewhat to the running back's release for the Jags that I talked about there, but sometimes the running back is checking to help out with an edge rusher. But you can see the 2 underneath drags. Lamar and the Ravens take advantage of the Browns playing this like combo coverage. They play man to the boundary and zone to the field, but pretty much everybody does that against trips or bunch. It's a third down play as well. You can see at the top of the screen, it's a 3rd and 5. One more play just to illustrate how classic or commonly used the base version of mesh is. Before Anthony Richardson got hurt, mesh with the sit route in the middle of the field. Additionally, the running back, after the motion, is running the wheel to up the top side here. 2 underneath drags, and then a sit route in the middle of the field by, I believe, maybe Pittman, excuse me. I'm sorry, it was 11. And a completion on one of the drags. So back to Jags film. It's not uncommon to see teams using it on third down. It is a little noteworthy, if you ask me. This is the 8th possession, Week 14. Mesh, again, it's 3rd and 3 in pretty much the same exact part of the field. Whenever you see this in your scouting teams, you're like, okay, well, how often does this come up? Third down, and they run the same concept in the same part of the field. My apologies. That's the same play again. Use that for illustration. That was the first play I showed you. Look where this one is. This is the 8th possession. Somewhat different version, slightly different version of mesh. The ball's right on the 50. Again, I actually really love this play from Lawrence. It's two very similar concepts. You do have the two underneath drags. You can see Ingram from one side, and Zay Jones is going to be the guy who catches the ball down here to the downside. It's somewhat different. The running back isn't releasing on the wheel. I suspect that the running back and Lawrence were communicating pre-snap. Look, it's a 3rd down, and the Browns were showing big blitz numbers at the line of scrimmage. So possibly, I think the Browns were expecting the mesh call, which now we're getting into what teams are expecting of each other and how they can force someone to check out of something. Typically, the running back would, release out here. I think because of all these guys lined up here for the Browns, that Lawrence and or the running back have determined he's going to stay in the block in case there was more rushers. This is still a mesh-ish concept, but you've got this kind of like sail look to it to the downside, with Zay Jones being the final delineation coming from the other side of the field. I think the Browns also were looking for typical version of mesh. Recall the play that I showed you previously. I actually showed it to you twice now. Zay Jones finishes in the middle of the field on what I call a sit route. Well, here they've run mesh, but not run the sit route. So the gamesmanship of the Browns, possibly, I think, maybe recognizing that mesh is coming. So maybe there's a tendency to run it on 3rd down near midfield like I've shown you on these two plays. I don't know. I'm not saying to you that it is. I'm just saying on the two plays that we've got in the film from the last 2 weeks, we got it twice on a 3rd and 2 and then a 3rd and 3 right on the 50-yard line. Last iteration of it is also on a 3rd down from the same game, but you can see it's a little further back in JAGS territory. And it might give some indication as to why the Browns were playing that free safety down in the middle of the play by the 3rd time they saw it. Again, it's a 3rd and 10. It ends up being an incomplete pass to Ridley against zone. I would call this quarter half by the Browns. So you've got nickel defender here, boundary side corner, boundary side safety. I'm bringing those up for a reason. I'll illustrate in a moment. I just wanted to establish the terminology. Some people call it cover 6. I call it quarter half, whatever. The key is that the flat defender to one side, the half side is a corner, the corner to the boundary, with the boundary side safety being the half defender, 1/2 or 50 cents, let's call it. The flat defender to the other side of the field is the nickel, where the quarter is. So quarter, half, or cover 6, 4 plus 2 is 6. That's how it was explained to me, why some people call it cover 6. There's at least one other explanation that I know of. But in any case, Lawrence is trying to get the 1st down, so he's not really focused on getting the ball to this drag at all. You've got 2 routes breaking across the interior of the field. The first DB, the safety, to the quarter side, is taking the first in-breaking route, and the corner to the field is taking the other one. That's typically the way that we would match it up. There's just no clear path for the ball to get there. In hindsight, like I said, people would say that 15 is open from the top side of the field, and he is. But Lawrence wants to get a sure thing beyond the line to gain because it's 3rd and 10. So what do we have? We have mesh 3 times against the Browns on 3rd and 10 in each use. Look for it, if you ask me, on 3rd down against the Ravens at least once early. But if you're a Jags fan watching this long, you don't know this probably. If you're a Ravens fan, you should know this. The Ravens have really struggled, particularly recently, with a unique concept or style route on 3rd down. And it's a tight end delay route. So maybe Peterson has seen some of that, and maybe he'll go away from some of his tendencies that could be showing up here. I don't offer to you that's all he runs on 3rd down, but we have 3 of them run on 3rd down last week against the Browns. 2 of them in very similar situations, ball on the 50-yard line. And we have, I think, 70% of the mesh iterations I found in my computer, because I label every play that I save, were on 3rd down in the NFL in 2023. All right, so let's get into one concept, or it's really not a concept, one unique type of route that teams have been using against the Ravens more as the season has developed. And when I say teams, the Bengals used it in Baltimore in week 10. The Browns used it in week 11, or maybe I have those games mixed up. My apologies. I think I do. And then the Rams used it last week in overtime. Unfortunately for them, the pass fell incomplete. And I'll show you at least 3 of those examples that I'm referencing. This is week 4. Ball's actually not going to be thrown to the tight end. It is a third down. These delayed releases. So a tight end being used to chip an edge defender for the Ravens, who may or may not be rushing. The Ravens run so much chaos. In this case, the edge defender, outside linebacker to the boundary is not rushing. The edge defender, outside linebacker here is. But the Browns are using Njoku to chip him and then release late. And some people say, well, Coach, that ball is going to be thrown at 3, 4, 5 yards depth. Yeah, but the idea is that we're sometimes giving so much space, so much room to the tight end that once he catches the football, he's able to really get a lot of yards after the catch. If you're a Jags fan, you're unfamiliar with the frustration of this. Ravens fans already know where this is going. Home loss to the Browns, really disappointing. Have to give this credit to Deshaun Watson. He played an amazing game that week. So this is a 3rd and 9, I believe mid-third quarter. Ravens are playing, I would call it their famous or infamous 2 deep, 4 under coverage, which we like to do on third down from a mug look. And we end up with 2 safeties deep, like a cover 2. 4 under defenders, flat defender, which is probably just man over there because it's the 1 receiver side. 2 underneath droppers. Normally you'd have 5 under in a cover 2, in an old school cover 2. In a Tampa 2, these guys would be a little bit wider, Queen and Smith, and then you'd have a Mike linebacker or perhaps a nickel safety, whatever. People can use any position they want to run the middle of the hashes. Some people call it run the pipe, whatever. The Ravens are doing this with a 5-man rush and 4 underneath, so they're trading one of the coverage guys for a rusher. That can hurt you when the tight end catches the football, and there's a whole lot of space between defenders and him, especially when it's somebody who's a bull like David Njoku. Let's see it one more time. If you're a Ravens fan, you've seen it too many times already, even in this video. If you're a Jags fan, this is the type of thing that the Ravens have had trouble with. It sounds unbelievable for the reputation that the Ravens defense has, which I think is deserved. They're playing at an incredibly high level. Overtime last week, 3rd down. Ravens have already punted. And this, I believe, is intentional, meaning the Rams game planned this. I think they saw this on film, and they knew that in these situations we would be dropping back. We'd be getting a lot of depth, particularly when we have guys lurking, mug, whatever you want to call it, simulated pressure at the line of scrimmage. Linebackers getting depth. One of the keys is we're almost always playing man on the running back to the boundary if he is to the boundary, meaning the running back. Patrick Queen, the will linebacker for the Ravens, you can bet if it's 11 personnel and the ball's on a hash, he's going to be into the boundary. If he's not, it's a totally different coverage than what I'm showing you here in terms of man to the boundary. Let's get to the end zone angle so you can see what I'm talking about. So Ravens have inverted their rush guys. They got Clowney and Van Noy on the inside, and the D tackles, Matabike and Pierce on the outside. I mean, first of all, like, watch this move that how did no one pick up Kyle Van Noy before the Ravens did? Like, thank you to the rest of the NFL. He had a ridiculous game. I did a film study on him after this win against the Rams, and I missed this play. I didn't put this one in there, but here's the chip delayed release by the tight end to help out against the pass rush, and then let the Ravens linebackers get depth. And if you ask me, Stafford was just staring at Roquan Smith the whole time. Sidearm delivery. You can see Van Noy damn near knocks that pass down. Pause for effect. So you can see Stafford. I think there's nothing else that he's looking at other than perhaps the safety in the middle of the field. 2 safeties, excuse me. You get it, right? That delayed tight end route is there. Maybe on some of these third downs, instead of running mesh or more familiar concepts, that's what Peterson and the offensive staff will go to. Okay, other things that perhaps they might look at is third down, where you put the running back kind of can determine who Patrick Queen is guarding if we're in man coverage, meaning the running back is to the field here. Patrick Queen is going to be to the boundary. Ball's on the hash. He's going to be to the boundary. Roquan Smith is going to be to the field. If they're not, if it's flipped, something's going on. Or if the nickel is to the boundary. So what does this do? Well, if we're playing man or some level of man, we play a lot of split field quarters coverage, and I suspect that there is a little bit of an element of that to this, then you can manipulate who Patrick Queen has to deal with. Now, this one clearly looks like man. It's a win for the tight end, out and up, whatever people want to call it. There's new names for everything. It's a third down, and it's clearly a win by the tight end. Great throw by Burrow. Great catch by the tight end up top. I think Brandon Stevens, possibly should have been involved to help out a little bit, but nonetheless, he was not. Getting back to manipulation, ball's on the left hash. Here's a running back's feet. Where's Queen? To the boundary. Smith to the field. They've put Jamar Chase down here. What's it tell you? Well, it tells you, number one, it's not a run play, but on some of these third down situations, you already knew that. This one's 3rd and 5. Browning's got a little bit of escapability, ends up being a sack, but check out what we have to do coverage-wise because we've got Queen to the boundary and Jamar Chase in the slot down there. Now, some people are going to call this a double team. I would say that, there's an element of this that looks like it could be two read initially, but I believe we make a call down here for the safeties at some point to basically say, hey, take him man, number one, Stevens, and then Queen stay inside leverage just like two read or palms, except on an outcut, the safety will take it. Whereas normally the corner would take that outcut on two read or palms, but the Ravens aren't playing a lot of that. They're not playing a lot of that anyway, number one. Number two, they're not playing a lot of that on third down. My point in showing you this, especially if you're a Jags fan, is pre-snap, if the running back is to the field, you've done something to our defense such that Queen is no longer just, quote, guarding the running back. There's going to be some other manner in which we handle the routes over there based on who's lined up to the boundary. Tight end, receiver, whatever. Hopefully I said that in a way that makes sense. Hopefully you guys enjoyed looking at the concept of mesh, number one, which I then branched off into talking about how teams kind of try to manipulate the Ravens or move people around in a way that forces our hand defensively from a coverage standpoint and perhaps gives the quarterback a little bit of knowledge about what we're doing. So one other thing about boundary side coverage, when the running back is there and the tight end, well, now you've given us at least 3 players to deal with offensively. For our 3 boundary side players, the Ravens will oftentimes drop the boundary side edge defender and bring Patrick Queen on a blitz. Or, as you see in this case, Week 4 road win against the Browns. Queen is locked up on the back. On another third down, Stone locked up on the tight end. Corner, man on one. So you've clearly got man free here. And Stone gives up a completion to the tight end. I would say that some of those boundary side coverages with Stone and or Queen locked up on a guy like Evan Ingram looks like a potential matchup advantage for the Jags just because Ingram is so talented, such great hands, and is so agile for a tight end. I used the word intentionally earlier for him, calling him a hybrid tight end wide receiver, and that wasn't to indicate that he can't block. It's to indicate that he can block, at least better than he was given credit for in the last couple of years. But when you let him stand up as a wide receiver, I feel like he gives you the same talent level and the same ability to win after the catch. The last element that I want to cover, at least for this preview Friday morning, might seem somewhat unusual choice for some people, Ravens fans and or Jags fans. With so much talent on the offensive side, Lawrence, Etienne, Christian Kirk, who's been out injured, Calvin Ridley, who's having a nice season, coming back from being suspended for a year, Ingram, Zay Jones, a guy who gave us trouble last year. The guy I want to focus on is Parker Washington. Didn't get too many opportunities early because Christian Kirk is there. He's a starting slot receiver. They move him around. He's not only a slot. Christian Kirk can play anywhere. But Parker Washington was someone that I was really high on in the draft process last year out of Penn State. I felt like he was drafted a little later than maybe he should have been, quote unquote. His talent level, I think, was higher than where he was drafted. He's had an impact in the last 2 weeks. Does have 2 fumbles, to be honest with you. One thing I've noticed is he's made an impact on third down. This is a third down against the Browns last week. Slot fade on a play where the Browns are trying to convince the refs that an offensive lineman jumped. and the Browns are clearly off sides. Multiple guys not playing football. Parker Washington isn't one of them. Now, admittedly, he does have 2 fumbles in the last 2 weeks. He's also got 2 great catches in the end zone. This is man-free. I mean, we know as Ravens fans very acutely that the Browns are physical. They're going to play man coverage. They're going to make you beat them. In this case, it's a concept that the Ravens run a lot of, is slot fade out of trips. So basically 1 and 3 run stops, and 2 runs a slot fade against man. It's just one-on-one. Isolation doesn't always turn into a jump ball. But look, Parker Washington isn't a huge receiver from a height standpoint. He's just talented as hell. Same play, end zone angle. You'll see what the Browns are trying to convince the refs of and not playing football. Beautiful throw and catch to Parker Washington. Cool moment. He's got 2 touchdowns in the past 2 weeks, both of them on 3rd down. So it looks like man, he's motioned across. Mike Hilton, one of the better nickel defenders in the league, has gone with him. Washington's going to motion again. And Lawrence goes left and comes back to the right in terms of his read. Starting over to the left, top side of our screen. Comes back. Came back so quickly and abruptly, it almost looked intentional that he was coming back there so soon. Zay Jones is really just occupying the guy guarding him and the safety in the middle of the field. Parker Washington against Dax Hill, a super athlete from Michigan. His brother is Justice Hill, who plays for the Ravens. Dax Hill actually has his hands on it, and Parker Washington is able to come down with it and make the catch. He's the guy who motioned across right to left on our screen. Going to motion back through a second time, and we'll pause it at the catch point. You can see Dax Hill has the ball in front, potentially with an interception, and Parker Washington is able to control it with his right hand, then his left, and they gave him credit for being in bounds and controlling the football. Looks good to me. It all happened so fast, so you can understand why they've got to review it. Talented slot receiver, made big plays for Penn State for multiple years. One of the guys that I thought, if the Ravens weren't able to get a receiver early, that they could look at in the 3rd, maybe 4th round if he was still around. I like his game. I know that when Christian Kirk comes back, Christian Kirk will clearly be the starter, and you can't have 2 fumbles in your first 2 games where you get a lot of touches, you get a lot of opportunities. I don't think he will. He was never a fumbler that often for Penn State, at least. He's up at the top side of the screen in this little stacked Twins look. If you're a Jags fan and you watch this long, first of all, thank you. Second of all, let me know what you guys think of Parker Washington. He's one of the players that I looked at pre-draft that I thought was a better player than he was being projected. Hasn't gotten many opportunities this year, but super talented group of wide receivers there in Jacksonville with Ridley, Ingram, who I've already established that I think is a hybrid receiver / tight end, Zay Jones, Christian Kirk, guy who got hurt, unfortunately, first or second play of the game, I think, against the Bengals. This is my first preview for the Ravens-Jags matchup on Sunday Night Football. Really focusing on the Ravens defense and one formation, one concept, and one player that the Jags utilize and depend on or rely on in certain situations. You have to let me know what you guys think of the way that I broke this up. A little different than normal. Saturday morning, I hope to take a look at Ravens. I hope to show Ravens coverages in certain locations on the field and how I think that might impact or influence Doug Peterson's calls. And finally, how the Jags might attempt to run the football more against the Ravens to try to stay a little more balanced offensively so they don't get caught up in that situation where Mike McDonald is showing multiple looks to your quarterback, slowing his processing down and the receiver's processing down potentially, and by the time the quarterback gets through read 1 or 2, a pass rusher's there from an unknown path, creating a sack or a pressure that really destroys the whole flow of the offense. Please let me know what you think of the film study review here, or preview, I should say, in the comment section. If you think other Ravens fans and or Jags fans would enjoy this extended look at the Sunday Night Football game, then please consider grabbing a link to this video, sharing it out on social media to help this content get more reach.